Hey booktube! Welcome back to my channel, I'm the Book Mage. So I've been absent for a little bit. As you probably may have gathered, April is not my month, it is my least favourite month. This is very much a very casual, very like in my pyjamas, sat on my floor, weird different location, I know, very casual kind of like wrap up video. You can tell it's a casual video when I'm not even wearing lenses to cover up like my gross dead eyes, so. As you might expect, I did not read a whole lot in like the last half of March into like April. I'm trying to pick things back up for May, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, without any more rambling, let me tell you about the 4 books I've read in like the past 2 months. The first one, can we get some clown music? It is Empire of the Damned by J. Kristoff. And to clarify, the clown music is for me, not the book. Look, if you've been around, you know my journey with this book already. Basically, when the first one came out, The Empire of the Vampire, I thought that book, because it was from like one of my favourite at the time, one of my favourite authors, because I loved Nevernight. And you know, it's high fantasy, gothic, grimdark vampires, and I thought, as I would, like that sounds like my favourite thing ever, and I thought it was going to be my new favourite book of all time. Oh, sweet summer child. It was not. You may have been able to gather it was not. I have several videos discussing that already, but I kind of thought, like a dumbass, I'd kind of thought that like maybe it would like really get into the swing of things with book 2. I don't know why I thought that, because all the things I liked the most about book 1, they're just not present in book 2, and I should have known that going in. So if you're not familiar with this series, aside from the fact that it's like gothic, adult, high fantasy, grimdark vampires, you're basically following a character whose name is Gabriel de Leon, and he is, I can't remember what is and isn't a spoiler about the setup, but basically this world is always nighttime. Vampires have basically taken over, they've blocked out the sun, and you're following Gabe, who is, it flicks back and forth in time, so you see him as a boy as he like joins this basically vampire hunting order called the Silver Saints, and then it's also flicking to the present day where kind of like there's a few other books that do this. I think the Kingkiller Chronicles is famous for doing it. Also Interview with the Vampire, because this book series, they will not let Anne Rice rest. They will not stop with the Interview with the Vampire references. But basically, Gabe is telling his story in the present day to someone who's like, he's writing the story down. They want to like chronicle what happened, because Gabe is like an important historical figure, because he's just really good at killing vampires. So yeah, so I picked up book 2, and no spoilers or anything, but I just kind of thought that maybe the series would like hit its stride, that I just thought it would be better. I just thought that like some of the things that I didn't like from the first book just would like, they would like iron themselves out and stop being issues, but it just didn't really turn out to be that way. It just kind of turned out that this is just, it's so middle book. So much of this book is just pointlessly going from point A to point B to point C back to point A, and it's just like nobody really has a plan. Everyone in this is really stupid. Every single character, I figured it out. I said that the thing that I hated from the first book was that we had like this sassy band of misfits who were always being like bitchy and sassy and witty and quippy to each other, and everyone was just talking in like one-liners. Oh my god, all the dialogue is in one-liners, and I was just like, I hate those characters, I hope they don't come back. As it turns out, every single character in these books is like that. The background characters, even like the depressed peasants, like you'll meet like a barman and somebody will say something and they'll come up with like another random quippy one-liner, or like you'll meet some other Silver Saint who you'd think would be like all grim and depressed and serious, but even they're all quipping like little one-liners and little sassy retorts, and it's every single character, and I'm just like, this is meant to be a miserable grimdark world where people just like it's meant to be so miserable, and I'm like, how is it that literally every single person in this entire series is like a comedian with just like a sassy little snappy comeback ready to go, no matter the situation, no matter the topic. Every single character talks like that, and I hate it. I've decided I hate it. I hate the way that J. Kristoff writes dialogue. That's just my whole personal thing. I didn't really vibe with this book very much. It's the worst parts of this book were nowhere near as bad as the bad parts of book 1, but like also I was kind of like bored the whole way through. It gets good at about like somewhere past the 500 page mark is where I got interested. It's just so mediocre. This series is so mid, and like it could be so good. Like it has so much potential, and like it's doing nothing with it. I think I'm just gonna give this like a straight 3 stars, because it's just like nothing about this is, it's just so meh. It's just so mid, and I just so don't care. And I feel like at this point I'm bound to like read the 3rd book just to like figure out what's gonna happen in the end, but Like, at this moment in time, I don't want to. I figure by the time it comes out in like a year or two, I'll probably feel like I'll just get through the slog just to say that I finished it, because I've read so much already. But this series is just so dull, and like, it shouldn't be. Like, why is it so boring? I feel like there's probably way more I could say about this series, but like, I can't remember everything I want to say about that book. It's been like a month and a half. I read it at like right at the end of February / right at the very start of March. But I do have a whole reading vlog where I just chat shit about it, so if you want to see it, that is always up on my channel, but otherwise I'm not going to make this video any longer than it needs to be. Okay, the second book that I have to talk about today is one that I picked for my friend's little book club. So we started a thing that we're just calling Goth Girl Book Club, because there's only 3 of us and we're all kind of goth. So it's been going for a few months now, and finally it was my turn to pick. And you may have seen already, because I do have a vlog, but I made the girls read The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. And I picked this because it was a new release and I was really excited for it, and I kind of tricked the girls into reading it by being like, oh my god, look at all like the cool like fungus imagery, and it's like a high fantasy, and it's like a mystery, and it sounds really interesting. And I kind of knew that it was definitely my thing more than their thing. I don't think anybody hated it, but I really liked it, and that's what's important. Sorry girls. So The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett is honestly a really fascinating series, and I have figured out now that I think this is going to be a series. This is not a standalone. I wasn't sure at first, but honestly I would love to read more in this world. So the basic premise of the book is that at a kind of like remote like stately sort of like manor home, a visiting high-ranking officer is killed quite suddenly and violently and through unknown means when, for seemingly no reason at all, a tree just suddenly spontaneously bursts out of his body, ripping him apart and killing him in the process. And 2 investigators are called in to see if they can figure out what the hell happened here, and who may be responsible. So that's kind of the basic setup, and this is set in a really, really fascinating world. So there is like a map in here, but it's quite hard to see. It's kind of got like a little bit of like an Attack on Titan setup, where you have like these walls. So you have like the inner walls where it's like safer and sort of like your upper class live, all the way out to sort of like the frontier by the coast. And the way I will sort of describe this world is, I love that it's kind of like cyberpunk, but with mushrooms and fungus and like biomechanical stuff, but instead of it being like machinery and technology, it's all organic, if that makes sense. So you do have like genetically modified life forms, and like including humans, like they can get like upgrades and all sorts of things, but it's more like fantasy biology and like chemistry, but not like the technological side of things, which is really fascinating. And the way I would describe the world, and I don't think it's spoilers to say this because everything I'm about to say is technically in the synopsis, but this world is kind of like, it's basically Morrowind if Pacific Rim was happening at the same time. But we don't care about that. We're focused on the mystery. That's kind of like the general like world setup, which it's so fascinating to me. So I ended up really, really enjoying this one. I think I gave it like a 4, maybe like a 4.25-ish. I can't remember. There's like a whole vlog on it. I was really, really happy that I picked this one up. The only reason this isn't higher for me is because like I don't really have like a strong emotional connection to like any of the characters or anything like that. This is one I would highly, highly recommend if you like mystery, if you like high fantasy, if you like mushrooms and stuff and cool world building and just like, I don't know, just kind of like an all-around fun time. I say it's fun. I don't know how fun this is, but I found it fun to read. And when I did actually get time to like sit down and read this, I kind of flew through it. So it's really, really fast paced, at least in my opinion. So yeah, I would highly recommend this one to anyone looking to pick up like a fantasy mystery new release. So another book that I read kind of like on and off through like the past like month and a bit, mainly one that I started listening to while I was dyeing my hair, is Dark Archives by Megan Rosenblum. And I'm gonna have to look at the little like tagline for this. So it is a librarian's investigation into the science and history of books bound in human skin. So I totally felt like throwing this on as like a fun little thing to listen to while I dyed my hair. And I did actually find this really, really fascinating. So I am not someone that normally does audiobooks, but I have found that I absolutely can do like a non-fiction audiobook, because it kind of feels like I'm listening to a podcast, to be totally honest. This book is kind of taking you through like a scientific look at anthropodermic bibliography, which is where you take a book and you rebind it in human flesh, like human skin. The same way that you would rebind anything in like cow leather. If it's got skin, you can make leather out of it. Do you know what to tell you? Humans have got some skin. I found this really, really interesting, not least because it's like, first of all, it's a book about books, and anything to do with books and book binding is just fascinating to me, obviously, as someone who reads a lot of books. And so the book is kind of taking you through like through different like case studies, or like through different parts and times of history to look at where these books came from, who are they made from, if they can learn that, are they even really human skin. I would say it's really, really accessible, and like for me, I found it really engaging and very, it might be the way that it's narrated, because it does kind of feel like you're sitting down to like have a tea or something with like a very passionate friend of yours who just wants to talk and talk and talk about like their latest passion of human skin books, which, God, I wish I had a friend like that. If the girls from book club are listening, I'm gonna need one of you to get a new hobby, otherwise it's gonna have to be me. So I thought it did have a really good balanced mix of talking about like, from like a scientific sort of detached perspective, like the books and how they came to be, but also looking at like a cultural, ethical, societal viewpoint about these very interesting objects. So if you're interested in books bound in human skin, I would highly recommend this one. I actually really liked it. And the last book that I read, and I started this took me so long to read. It's not the book's fault, it's 100% my fault, and that is Every Star a Song by J. Posey. This is the second book in the Ascendant series, so the first one was Every Sky a Grave, and guys, look, I thought this was a duology. I guess book 3 just isn't out yet, because how this ends, I have realised it's definitely a series. Like, when I started this, I picked it up because I thought it was a duology. Alas. So going into this, I was kind of expecting it to end, and I was really like in the last like 30 pages I was like, can we wrap it up? Are we wrapping it? I don't think we are. I think we're getting a book 3. This is very different from the first book, but the first book starts out, you're following a woman named Elith, and she's a part of this all-female organization who are trained in like the ancient power of this thing called the Deep Language, which is basically if you could access sort of like the very foundation of like the existence of the cosmos through language, kind of like, it's kind of like magical yoga, but with words, like words of power. And her place within the house is that she is sometimes sent to like errant planets, like errant worlds, where the paragon of her house has sort of decided through some means or another that these worlds are no longer viable, they're corrupt, and for the good of the rest of like the ascendancy, the rest of the galaxy, they need to be put down. So she will travel to the planet, learn everything that she can about it, and she will essentially speak magic words and cause the planet to wither and die and no longer be inhabitable, just like a dead floating rock in space, I guess. And at the start of the first book, she's sent off to perform this duty of basically killing a planet, killing a world. And when she arrives on this planet, it's all going wrong. It's basically her alone on this planet trying to avoid things like being killed and captured. It's kind of like very cat and mouse, but at the same time, it's her learning about the planet and like considering her duty and her task and like where her loyalties lie. So I found it was a really interesting first book, and it's quite grounded for a sci-fi. It's not like super technical or anything. I can't really tell you the setup for this one because I feel like it would spoil a lot of how the first book like progresses and ends, but basically this one is set almost pretty much entirely on another different planet, and this one has more of like a core cast of characters that are sort of present throughout the whole of the book, and this almost gave, like, parts of this book gave me almost like Annihilation vibes a little bit, just like a little bit. I kind of found like the progression of like the setting and the location really, really interesting. There is like a robot in this, and is it Interstellar where they've got like a cool morphing robot thing? Like a little helper robot? You know, so it felt a bit more sci-fi and a bit weirder in that aspect. And there's much more of like a mystery to this one, kind of, I guess. So it's hard for me to say. I'm not sure whether I enjoyed this one more or less. It felt like a very different kind of story that just was continuing on. I think the thing I enjoyed most about the first one was a relationship between like two particular characters, which is kind of different in this, and like you didn't get as much of it in this. I wasn't as invested. What I was invested in is because we had this whole new cast of characters, this happens every fucking time. I pick my favourite, you can see where this is going. I picked my favourite character, and like to say I was in like such like a reading slump, like I couldn't really read, and I was like, look, this is the kind of book where I can dip in and out of it and just like come back, and like it's very forgiving. It's quite easy to read, to be honest, for an adult sci-fi. You know, one of those times where I thought, right, I'm gonna push on, I'm gonna start reading. Like literally at the end of the chapter, my favorite fucking character just dies, and I'm like, for God's sakes, who is going to give me my good dialogue and cause problems and get stuff done but in a way that is annoying for everyone? At like, how is it? I had to put the book down. So again, if you're wondering why it took me so long to read this, partly it was my brain, but then partly I did have to like rage quit for a little bit, because I was like, how dare I spend a couple weeks not reading, and I come back to reading this thinking I'm finally going to make progress, only for like the little carrot that was being dangled in front of my face to die, to be separated into multiple pieces. To be fair, I did really like all the characters in this. I ended up really liking this one. It is, if I'm not contending with like my brain just not behaving, it is actually like a really fast, easy read. It is really engaging. I really like this series, and it was really engaging and really interesting, and I really liked it. So I think I gave this a 4 stars as well. And I definitely will be going on to read the last book, even though I only thought there were 2. It's fine, it's fine. I like this series. If there's 4 books, I'm gonna start getting mad. But like, as long as it ends at book 3, I will definitely read it. So yeah, I know this is kind of like a bit of a slog. Like, in terms of reading, I feel like I am like dragging myself through the mud, like just trying to get to the end of a book sometimes. But that's very much my brain and not the books, so just keep that in mind. Except Empire of the Vampire. That one was just mid. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, leave me some sort of like celestial emoji. I don't know if we have like planet emojis. If we don't, why don't we? But leave me some sort of like celestial kind of emoji. And out of curiosity, maybe let me know like what is your like longest or worst reading slump you've ever been in, because mine is like 2.5 years. You might notice at this very start of my booktube journey, I was coming out of like a over 2-year reading slump, so that was fun. But yeah, other than that, let me know if any of you have read these books, if you enjoyed these books, if you share my opinions, or if you disagree and you want to fight about it in the comments. I am mentally exhausted, so like if you start a fight with me right now, you'll probably win. So again, thank you so much for watching. That is it from me, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!